It is early morning. The light is low and flat, still gray at the edges, and your backyard is doing what it always does at this hour, settling into itself. A European robin lands on the fence post nearest the garden, tilts its head at a precise angle, and holds that position for 2 full seconds before moving on. You have seen this 100 times. The posture looks like attention. It looks like listening. You have probably never thought much about it. Neither have most people. Somewhere above the garden, just past the roof line, a blackcap warbler is moving northeast. It is doing this without landmarks. Without stars, it is still too light for stars. Without any physical structure you could point to and call a compass. The bird weighs 11 grams. Its skull is roughly the size of a walnut shell. And somewhere inside the retina of its right eye, a molecular process is taking place that physicists have spent decades trying to understand, a process that appears to involve quantum mechanics, the branch of physics that governs the behavior of particles so small they do not follow ordinary rules. The bird is not remarkable. This morning is not remarkable. And yet what is happening inside that animal, at this moment, cannot be fully explained by any scientific framework currently available. This is not a metaphor. It is not an interpretation. There are peer-reviewed papers in journals like Nature and PNAS. There are research centers, at the University of Oldenburg in Germany, at Oxford, at Lund University in Sweden, with multiple active teams, funded over decades, working on a single core question: how does a bird know which way to go? After more than 50 years of concentrated scientific effort, the answer remains genuinely incomplete. Not almost complete. Not nearly there. The mechanism, at its most fundamental level, has not been fully mapped. What follows are 5 documented signs of something that, if you stop and look at it carefully, does not behave like ordinary biology at all. If you find this kind of investigation interesting, the kind where the science is real, the mystery is real, and nobody yet has the full picture, subscribe. This channel covers exactly that territory. Coming up in the final section, the documented moment when a researcher's entire experiment stopped working for years, not because of bad methodology, not because of equipment failure, but because of something in the air of a German city that turned out to be far stranger than anyone expected. 1. Most people who watch birds assume that magnetic navigation works something like a compass needle inside the animal, a small piece of magnetized material that swings toward north, the way iron filings align in a classroom demonstration. This is a reasonable assumption. It is tidy. It maps onto something we already understand. The scientific reality is considerably stranger. Researchers at Oxford University and the University of Oldenburg have identified the probable mechanism, and it is not a physical needle. It is a protein called cryptochrome 4, located in the retinas of migratory songbirds. When light, specifically blue light, strikes this protein, it triggers a photochemical reaction that produces what physicists call a radical pair, 2 molecular fragments, each containing a single unpaired electron. Those electrons, according to the theory, become quantum entangled. The magnetic field of the Earth then influences the quantum spin state of these paired electrons, and that influence is read, somehow, as directional information. The bird is not feeling magnetic north. It is, in the most literal available interpretation of the evidence, seeing it, as a pattern overlaid on its ordinary vision. What makes this genuinely strange is this: quantum entanglement, the phenomenon at the proposed center of this compass, is something physicists have enormous difficulty maintaining even in controlled laboratory conditions at temperatures near absolute zero. A bird's eye operates at body temperature, in a warm, wet, biochemically chaotic environment. The quantum coherence in cryptochrome 4 persists for approximately 100 microseconds in those conditions. That number is not remarkable in everyday terms. But in quantum biology, it is far longer than theory originally predicted was possible. Nobody has explained why. The environment should destroy the coherence almost instantly. It does not. 2. It is commonly assumed that a bird's navigational sense, whatever its mechanism, is robust in the way that most animal senses are robust, the way your vision still works under a cloudy sky, the way your sense of smell persists in a slight wind. We assume biological systems have built-in tolerance for interference. In 2014, a research team led by Professor Henrik Moritzen at the University of Oldenburg published a paper in Nature that directly contradicted this assumption. The discovery was accidental in the most productive sense. Moritzen had been running standard orientation experiments with European robins on the university campus, a methodology established in the 1950s, used reliably for decades. When he arrived at Oldenburg, the experiment simply stopped working. The birds disoriented. They flew random directions. He changed the light conditions, the food, the funnel size, the experimental design. Nothing helped. For years, the results were unusable. Then, in 2006, a colleague suggested placing the birds inside aluminum-screened huts, Faraday cages, which block electromagnetic fields. The compass came back. When the grounding was removed and background electromagnetic noise was allowed back in, the compass failed again. The team spent years confirming this result, double-blinding the tests, systematically varying every parameter. What they found was that the birds were being disrupted not by power lines, not by mobile phone signals, but by broadband electromagnetic noise in the frequency range of 2 kHz to 5 MHz, the range associated with AM radio signals and ordinary household electronics. Fields so weak they fall orders of magnitude below any human health threshold. Fields that, by any existing regulatory standard, should not be doing anything to any living tissue. What makes this genuinely strange is this: the reason such weak fields could disrupt the compass at all is that the mechanism depends on quantum coherence, and quantum coherence, unlike ordinary biological processes, is theoretically vulnerable to exactly that kind of low-energy electromagnetic noise. The disruption is not thermal. The fields are not breaking molecular bonds or heating tissue. They are introducing enough quantum noise to collapse the spin states the compass depends on. This means the bird's compass is not just using quantum mechanics. It is sensitive to interference at quantum scales, interference that our own technology generates constantly, invisibly, in every building, in every city, across most of the inhabited world. 3. It is generally believed that a magnetic sense, if a bird has one, functions as a single unified system, the same way your eyes are one system, your ears another. The idea of an animal having two separate, parallel magnetic senses seems unnecessary. Redundant. Biology, we assume, does not over-engineer. Evidence gathered across multiple research institutions now points toward exactly that. Birds appear to possess two functionally distinct magnetic senses operating simultaneously. The first is the quantum-based compass in the eye, the cryptochrome system, sensitive to the direction of field lines, apparently processed as visual information through the right eye specifically. Experiments with European robins have shown that covering the right eye eliminates magnetic orientation, while covering the left eye does not. The lateralization is precise and consistent. The second system appears to be linked to the trigeminal nerve and may involve small deposits of magnetite, iron-based crystals found in the upper beak of several species. This system is thought to be less a compass than a map component, potentially sensitive to field intensity and inclination rather than just direction, allowing the bird to assess not just which way it is facing but roughly where in the world it is. When researchers applied local anesthesia to the upper beak of European robins, disrupting the trigeminal nerve, the birds retained directional ability but lost something else, a positional component that could not be recovered through the visual system alone. What makes this genuinely strange is this: if the quantum compass gives direction and the trigeminal system gives position, the bird is performing a continuous, unconscious integration of two physically distinct magnetic signals, derived from entirely different biological mechanisms, into a single coherent navigational output, with no intermediary instrument, no calibration step, and no known neural pathway that scientists have fully traced from either sensory input to the behavioral result. 4. Here is a number. In 2022, a juvenile bar-tailed godwit, a large shorebird, Lamosa laponica, tagged as a hatchling in Alaska and tracked by researchers at Germany's Max Planck Institute for Ornithology, flew 13,560 kilometers non-stop from the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta to the northeastern tip of Tasmania, Australia. 11 days. No rest. No food. The bird was 5 months old. It had never made this journey before. There was no parent with it. There was no flock to follow. There was nothing to follow at all. It was flying over open Pacific Ocean for the majority of the trip, a surface completely devoid of landmarks, with no GPS, no star chart it had been taught, and no prior experience of any destination. Scientists believe it used a combination of magnetic field detection and celestial cues. What has not been explained is how a 5-month-old animal carries, encoded in its nervous system, the precision navigational information required to successfully execute a journey of that distance, a journey no member of its species has ever demonstrated to it, and land within accessible range of exactly the right tidal flat on the opposite side of the planet. What makes this genuinely strange is this: juvenile godwits succeed at this crossing at rates comparable to adults who have completed it before. The inherited information appears to be accurate enough, and the navigational system precise enough, to make prior experience almost irrelevant. The map is built in. Nobody knows how. 5. There is a widespread assumption that when scientists have identified the likely molecule involved in a process, when they can point to cryptochrome 4 and say, this is probably the structure doing the work, the essential mystery is nearly solved. The naming of a mechanism, we tend to feel, is most of the answer. Researchers at the University of Oldenburg, Oxford University, and Lund University have confirmed that cryptochrome 4 from European robins shows magnetic sensitivity under laboratory conditions. A 2021 paper in Nature demonstrated this directly, isolating the protein from robin retinas and testing it using miniaturized optical detection systems. The protein responds to magnetic fields. The radical pair mechanism operates as predicted. And yet, the protein sensitivity alone does not explain how the bird reads directional information from it. The quantum states that encode magnetic direction have to be converted, somehow, into a neural signal that the visual cortex can interpret. That conversion pathway has not been mapped. The signal has to be integrated with ordinary visual processing in real time, in flight, in changing light conditions, while the bird is simultaneously processing threat information, wind direction, and whatever social signals exist in the environment. How the brain separates the magnetic overlay from everything else it is seeing has not been demonstrated. The accuracy of the system, documented at 5 degrees or less under experimental conditions, is not fully accounted for by the sensitivity of the molecule alone. Something in the processing chain is amplifying precision in a way that current models do not predict. What makes this genuinely strange is this: after more than 5 decades of research, the protein has been identified, the quantum mechanism has been confirmed, the behavioral accuracy has been measured, and the connecting tissue between all three remains, in the language of the published literature, an open question. The parts are on the table. The assembly instructions do not yet exist. It is still early morning. The robin is back on the fence post, and the light has shifted just enough to show the orange of its breast clearly. It tilts its head. It holds that position, 2 seconds, maybe 3. You know now that in the retina of its right eye, a photochemical reaction is generating quantum-entangled electron pairs that are being influenced by the magnetic field of the Earth's molten core, and that this influence is registering somewhere in the bird's visual field as a pattern of light and direction that you have no sensory equivalent for, no vocabulary for, nothing in your own experience to compare it to. The yard has not changed. The bird is doing what birds have always done in your yard, and in every yard, and in every open field and tree line and coastal wetland on this planet, for millions of years before you were here. What has changed is this: you now know that the scientists who study this animal most closely, the ones who have isolated its proteins, mapped its neurons, published in the highest-ranking journals in the world, do not fully understand what it is doing right now. The robin lifts from the post. It flies northeast, which is, this morning, exactly where it means to go. You watch it until it is gone. You do not know which way northeast is. The bird always has. Has a bird in your yard ever done something with its posture or its direction, a pause, a tilt, a moment of stillness before flight, that seemed, in some specific way you could not explain, like it was reading something you couldn't see? I read every comment.